Dr. Sridevi, can we start our session for today?
Yeah, we can start.
Welcome to our 13th session. Today we are having a topic on wound management. It will be taken by Sister Shiva. So we can start with ma'am's presentation. We can have it for around 40 to 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of discussion. By 4, we can have our case presentation, followed by its discussion. By 4:30, we can wind up our session. Thank you all for joining in. Over to Dr. Sridevi.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, for joining in again for another section. So today we'll be hearing about wound management, which is really a very important topic when it comes to palliative care. Because many of us as doctors might have seen managing the wounds in hospitals by surgeons most often. But when you come to a palliative care setting, we'll have to learn it on our own. We have to train our nurses to do in a very limited resource setting, like in a home setting or in a hospice setting. So we will have limited supply of materials, and it has to be cost effective. And moreover, we have to teach the caregivers how to do all these at home, and they are not trained people. They are all lay persons. You have to train them also. And when it comes to us, it becomes really a difficult job for us to manage wound, because we are not used to all these things. So it is really an important topic. So I would like to introduce Sister Shiva, who was our head nurse for quite a long time in Pallium. When I joined, she was leading the nursing team, and I learned a lot of things from the nurses. They do a wonderful job with the wounds. So I used to ask all kind of stupid questions about wound, because we had no clue how they do all these things. So I learned basically everything regarding the nursing issues from them. And now she is coordinated for all the training programs. Apart from the virtual program, we have 6 weeks, 10 days residential programs happening in Pallium. So she is a coordinator of all the other training programs. Nice to see you again, Sister Shiva. Welcome to ECHO.
Thank you, Dr. Sridevi. Good afternoon to all. Happy to see you all. Today's topic is on wound management. As Dr. Sridevi said, we, as a medical professionals like us, we know what is wound. You might be seeing different types of wounds in your setting. Surgical wound and fracture wound and many other wounds. But in palliative care, we have seen only two types of wounds. One is pressure ulcer, and the another one is fungating wound or a cancer wound. So now we have already learned what is palliative care. So we learned paraplegic patients, bedbound patients really need palliative care. They need long-term management, but they are the most vulnerable persons to get pressure ulcer. So, so pressure ulcer is one of the major nursing issues in palliative care. There are the main causes of pressure ulcer is pressure, friction, and moisture. So first, let me discuss the pressure ulcer, and then we can move on to the fungating wound. What is pressure ulcer? So the name itself, you have said pressure ulcer is a localized injury to the skin and other underlying tissue, usually over the bony prominence as a result of prolonged unrelieved pressure. If there is an unrelieved prolonged pressure there is a chance of injury over the bony prominence. That is pressure ulcer. So what are the risk factors? First we can see the pathophysiology. So imagine one patient lying in a bed. So that time what happened? Because of the body weight and the base of the mattress compressed where the exert pressure together, and the tissues are not getting adequate blood supply from the blood vessels. You can see that if the tissues are not getting adequate the blood supply from the blood vessels, what happened? Tissue ischemia, hypoxia, finally stress and breakdown. This is the pathophysiology of pressure ulcer. So why I am telling this is, we have to know how to come the pressure also. That is why that then only we that the importance of changing pressures, the changing position, we need to understand. So next we can see the risk factors. So risk factors is, first one is friction. Imagine if a bed-bound patient, so we need to change the sheets every day or maybe 3 times. Depends on the, maybe if there is a urine that moisture there, we incontinence of urine and stool there, we need to change the sheets. What what we do is we pull the sheets under the patients. If you pull the sheets under the patients, what happens? There is a chance of friction. If there is a friction there, there is a chance of breakdown of tissues there. The skin breakdown is there. So if you apply more pressure, further pressure on that area, finally the pressure sore will develop from that area. The second one is shear. Shear means in an obese patient, there is a chance of slipping downwards to the bed. So when we back to their normal position, what happens? We give more pressure on the patient's body. So when we give more pressure on the patient body, there is a chance of tissue breakdown, the internal tissues breakdown. So we don't know that tissues breakdown or not. Gradually, that if you apply pressure, the patient's lying in a same position for a long time, gradually the pressure sore will develop. Impaired sensory perception. We know paraplegic patients are not able to sense the lower part of the body. They they are the risk group patients. They get pressure sore. And impaired physical mobility. The patients are not able to that change their position that automatically. So that person's also risk groups. And altered level of consciousness. Anyway, we know unconscious patients or semi-conscious patients, they are not able to move independently. Fecal and urinary incontinence also. Bed-bound patients, unconscious patients, and paraplegic patients also, they are that incontinence of urine and stool will be there. So there are three, I already told you, there are three main causes of pressure. So one is pressure, the second one is friction, the third one is moisture. If there is a moisture there, the continuous moisture there is a chance of breakdown of skin there. So fecal and urinary incontinence is another problem. Malnutrition, so loss of protein intake in their diet, there's a chance of development of pressure ulcer. Dehydration means if the dehydration there, the blood volume will reduce, the tissues are not getting adequate blood supply. And excessive body heat, again, if there is an excessive body heat there, there is a chance of sweating and moisture. Advanced stage is another risk factor. Next, we can see the common sites of pressure ulcer. So common sites of pressure ulcer is, it can occur anywhere on the body. So depends upon the patient position, it can occur. So you can see that yellow color spot, it will occur at the bony prominence like occiput, scapula, the patient's lying in a supine position, occiput, scapula, elbow, sacrum, ischium, and heel. These are the main bony prominence. The patients get pressure ulcer. So we need to learn what are the pressure points, each position. The first position, we usually, commonly the patients lying this position, supine position. Already said in supine position, head, shoulder, elbow, buttocks, and heel, toes is the main pressure areas. So why I am telling these pressure area is, we need to change the position 2 to 3 hours early. When we change the position from supine to sideline position, we need to give a special attention for those areas. If there is a color change there, we can give special attention for those areas, and if give some pressure relieving techniques also. Okay. The next position is side lying position. So side lying position, you can see ear, shoulder, elbow, knee. These are the pressure points. But in between, here one important thing, so if the patient is lying on a right lateral or left lateral position, so between knees, there is a chance of rubbing together, and another the on cause friction. That cause that small peeling of skin is there, then the pressure sore will develop from that area. So what we can do here is, you can, if the patient is in right lateral or left lateral position, you can keep a small pillow or a small sheet between the knees. That will prevent friction. And the third position is Fowler's position. Usually the dyspnea patients, we put the patients this position. We know this position is comfortable for the dyspneic patient. Even then, this is this position you have to turn at least 10 degree. Okay, so not completely the turn to right lateral or left lateral. So you have to that turn at least 10 degree. Okay. And the last position is prone position. We, if a patients have the sacral region is a big pressure ulcer on the sacral region, we put the patient in prone position. So even the prone position also, the lot of pressure points are there. So why I already told you, if you turn the patient from one position to another position, we give to special attention for that areas. Okay, if there is a color change, if there is any color change there, you can give a special attention for that area. Then we can see the stages of pressure ulcer. There are 5 stages of pressure ulcer. The first stage is non-blanchable erythema. Non-blanchable erythema is redness. Red color is, if the red color there, if you apply, for example, when a patient lying in a supine position, when you change the position from supine to side lying, the left lateral or right lateral position, the buttocks area, the sacral area, if there is a color change there, when you apply your pressure, that finger on that area, that redness will be there. That is non-blanchable erythema. Okay, so if there is a non-blanchable red color there, so the management of the stage 1 is, you can relieve the pressure on that area. Okay, you can prevent further pressure on that area. Otherwise, if you put the patient for the same position again, definitely the skin will break down. This is the first stage of pressure ulcer. The second stage is shallow open ulcer or dermis layer is breakdown. If otherwise, it's a blister formation will be there. If blister formation there, definitely the skin will break down. The blister is burst and skin will break down. This is, you can see it's a clear wound, no pus, no discharge. Here is the management only. You can wash with normal saline. No antibiotic is needed for this wound. The third stage is full thickness wound. Full thickness ulcer, you can see the subcutaneous layer. The subcutaneous layer will be affecting, and sometimes tunneling will be there. So we, if the tunneling there, you can give a special attention. You can, when you open the wound, you cannot able to see if the, you can't understand whether the patient's wound is having any tunneling or not. If you assess properly, you can identify whether it is tunneling or not. So you have to, when you assess the wound, you have to assess if there is any tunneling there. And the fourth stage is the exposed muscle, bone and tendon. This muscle and bone tendon will be affecting. I'll come to the management later. And the fifth stage is unstageable. Unstageable is if there is a black necrotic tissue on the top of the wound. We don't know how much layer is affected. So once you remove the slough on the top of the area, then only we have to know how much layer is affected. If there this type of wound there, when you document it, you have to document as unstageable wound. So there are 5 stages of wound. The first stage is non-blanchable erythema. The second stage is open shallow, the dermis layer will break down. The third stage is full thickness ulcer or subcutaneous layers will be affected. The fourth stage is muscle, bone, tendon is affecting. Fifth one is unstageable. If unstageable wound, if there's a dark that necrotic tissue or a slough on the top of the area, we can't assess the stages of wound, that is unstageable. Come to the assessment part. Each one of us, when you see that patient, you have to assess properly and document properly. So when you assess the patient, you have to ask the patient to whether the patient is having any pain or not. If they have any pain, you have to give some analgesics for the pain, and then only you have to do the wound management. Assess the location, where is the bed sore or the fungating wound location. Measure width, length. You just roughly identify what is the measure, length and depth of the wound, and stages of wound also. Stage, we already learned the five stages. You have to assess what is the stage of that wound. Presence of exudate. Exudate means the coming out of the purulent discharge or a fluid discharge from the wound, that is exudate. Assess for tunneling. Chart the findings. It's very, very important. The chart the finding. The documentation is very, very important. The documentation important is the mainly we know the main aim of palliative care is improve the quality of life of the patient and the family. So when you document properly, then only we have to know our treatment is effective or not, and our colleagues also need they should know. If you do the proper documentation, then only our colleagues and other team members will know what is the condition of the wound. It's whether the wound size is decreased, the wound our treatment is improved, good or not. So finding documentation is very, very important. Come to the management part. Management depend upon the prognosis. So here, if you see a end of life care patient, for example, as a 90-year-old that patient, so the mostly in end of life care situation, but the patient is having bed sore, 4th stage bed sore, slough is there. So that time, our aim is to relieve pain and gives that wound management. No need to send the patient for surgery consultation and slough cutting and all. So that time you have to give some pain medication for the patient, relieving of pain, and give the dressing also. And if there is a slough there, you have to remove surgically. You have to do the slough cutting procedure. Make sure whether the patient is having any pain or not. So before doing the management or slough cutting, when you do the slough cutting, give special attention for the granulation tissues. Always you can use normal saline for wound dressing. Keep covered and moist. Usually, before we keep the wound, you can keep your wound dry. But when now the literature says moist is one of the essential fact for wound healing. So keep always you can cover the wound, and moist is essential. If there is an odor or infection, what we can do is you can take a same metronidazole tablet, metronidazole, and make it a powder form and apply over the wound. Here, what we do here is we can apply, we can take a metronidazole powder and mix with the white petroleum jelly and then spread it over the wound. Here we have two actions. Metronidazole will reduce the infection, like anaerobic bacterial infection there. So metronidazole will reduce the infection, and white petroleum jelly will give the moisturizing effect. And if there is an odor, profuse order, there you can use a charcoal dressing also. Now the charcoal dressing is very expensive, but you can piece a one or two, take a one or two pieces of charcoal and keep corner of the bed, or that will absorb the bad smell. Avoid hypochlorite solution like povidone iodine and hydrogen peroxide. If these not two hydrogen peroxide and povidone iodine solutions, that will destroy the granulation tissues. So you can use normal saline for wound cleaning. And surgery consultation. You can refer the patients. For example, in the fourth stage of wound, the bed sore is there, you can refer the patient to surgery consultation also. So you can see whether it is skin the possible for a skin grafting or not. So you can take a consultation from surgery. And negative pressure wound therapy is also there. That will help to, with the help of suction apparatus, you can do this. You can, that when you do the negative pressure wound therapy, that exudates will comes down, that without within the pressure, because of that pressure, the exudate will come out and promote wound healing. And you can always teach the patient and family to homemade saline preparation and dressing materials, how to prepare dressing material at their home. Usually in palliative care settings, we have give all the dressing material to the patients. But in case if the dressing materials finish, what they will do? So you have to teach them that home remedies also. You can take 200 ml of boiled water and add 1 pinch of salt. That is, we know wound is not that this type of the pressure ulcer is not a sterile wound. Wounds that you can clean with a clean saline is enough for wound, this type of wound cleaning. And gauze piece. So how to make a dressing materials? So take that cotton sarees, dhotis, and square pieces, and you can keep put into the steam. You can give a steam half to 1 hour, and then you can take it out, and then you can use that dress, the cotton dhotis or a cotton material for dressing. So when you see that patients, you can see these type of patients, especially in home care setting, home care patients, you have to teach the patient how to prepare homemade saline and dressing material. So come to the prevention. So prevention is, we all know prevention is better than cure. So when you see these type of bed-bound patients, you have to teach the patient how to prevent pressure sore. So the main thing is change the position 2 to 3 hourly. So we know if there is an underlying pressure there is a chance of getting pressure ulcer. So we need to change the position 2 to 3 hourly. And when you change the position, you can give some liquid paraffin. You can apply liquid paraffin or white Vaseline on that area. If you apply white petroleum jelly or Vaseline on that area, what will happen is that your massage will help to improve the circulation. So apply liquid paraffin is very any moisturizing agent. Like otherwise, if there is no that white petroleum jelly or moisturizing agent there, they can apply coconut oil. That is enough for moisture. And water bed or air bed. So here you can see two type of bed. One is air bed and another one is water bed. So what is the difference between two? Anyone?
Can anyone tell what is the difference between the two types of beds?
Airbed will be better for this patient, maybe because sometimes we used to see that water bed has leakage and suddenly it become no bed, like, you know. And this one airbed is more easier also to use, and it will be better, right?
Okay. Anybody? Okay, here airbed, the major difference between airbed and waterbed is airbed need electricity. Here, water, no electricity is needed. And the airbed is 2 chambers. Okay, so alternate layers will be inflating, and once the inflated one is deflated, that deflated one is inflating. That is automatically relieving, that pressure relieving that will be take place there. But in case of water bed, what here liquid accept the pressure equally. No, the when a patient's lying in this type the water bed, what happened is the body weight is equally distributed. Okay, so here better in our experience, better is airbed is the best option, but the problem is the electricity bill is not affordable some patients, so they cannot tolerate the electricity bill. That time they prefer water bed. So my point here is even if the patient is in water bed or air bed, you have to change the patient. Okay, so water bed and air bed will give some pressure relieving, but not 100% pressure or preventable technique. Okay, somehow that pressure will reduce, but not pressure so preventable. So you can use water bed or air bed, but when you give when you instruct the patient, caregivers or patient to use water bed or air bed, you should explain what is the that aim of what is the use of air bed or a water bed. Even if the patient is in, the important thing you should explain the patient and caregivers if they need to change the position and assess the skin. So if there is a stage 1 skin lesion there, you can educate the caregivers to turn the patient. You can prevent that pressure on that area and excellent incontinence control. Incontinence control also. If there is a moisture there, if there is a redness there, again moisture is there. There is a chance of development of pressure sore is there. Maintaining of good nutrition. Already said protein intake. So make sure whether the patient is taking any protein intake. Usually in a normal person should take 0.8 gram protein per kg body weight. So the protein intake is very important. So when you see these type of patients, you have to tell these all things. And next, so you easily remember you can remember the prevention of bed sore. Skin means what the first S is supporting surface. So you can give that some pressure relieving techniques. Skin inspection. The second S is skin inspection. So regular the skin inspection will prevent breakdown of skin and keep moving, changing of position. The fourth one is incontinence or moisture control. If there is an incontinence or moisture there, we need to change the sheets as soon as possible. And nutrition I already said, protein intake. Okay, so you have easily remember skin for prevention of bed sore. And how we engage the patient and family for this treatment. We know patients, the caregivers role is very important for this type of patient. For a bedbound patient, they are not able to move independently. The patient caregivers is turn the patients every 2 to 3 hourly. So how to involve the patient family in that particular patient's care? So development of the contract of care. So when we see this type of patient, the home or a hospital, so instead of using you, So usually we use, you can change the sheets to change the position 2 to 3 hourly. You can change the the linen as soon as possible if there is a moisture there. So instead of using we can use V. So if we use V, how we can do together for prevention of bed sore, then they feel more comfortable with us. So in our experience also, instead of using you can, if you use V, usually they feel more comfortable, and they give special attention for that patients. When we see next time for that particular patients, they actually explain more, they asking more doubts. I am doing this, but if there is anything else to do further, something like that. So and give some patient information leaflets also. Here we prepare a Malayalam leaflets, and when we see this type of patients, usually we give the Malayalam leaflets also. You can also prepare in your own language, and you can give the patient to follow that how to change the position and all. Okay. So the next one is fungating ulcer. Fungating ulcer, we know what is the difference between pressure sore and fungating ulcer. I think all of you might be seen at least one cancer wound in your life. Anyway, what is the difference between fungating ulcer and bed sore?
Anyone would like to answer the question? Yes, doctor.
The fungating ulcer usually seen with the cancer patients, which is raised above the surface. Coming to the bed sore or the decubitus ulcer, always excavating ulcer below the surface of the skin.
Okay. Anything else?
Dr. Anne Grace, you are about to speak something, ma'am.
Okay. The major difference between fungating ulcer and bed sore is the pressure sore is preventable, and the cancer wound or a fungating wound is not preventable. The pressure sore is curable and treatable, but the fungating ulcer, the cancer wound, is not curable.
Yes, mom. Same thing I was thinking about that. Fungating ulcer, like it is about.
Who was that, Raju? Who was talking? I couldn't hear it completely.
Her voice was very feeble, and I think
Who was that?
Dr. Anne Grace.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so fungating ulcer is a primary or primary or secondary malignant growth in the skin which is ulcerated and difficult to heal. So if the fungating ulcer develop, it's difficult to heal, is not able to heal this type of cancer wound. Why that name called as fungating ulcer is, it look like a fungus nodular shape and a cauliflower in shape. Then only that is why this type of wound called as a fungating wound. And if there is a fungating wound there, both ulceration and proliferative growth will be take place. So day by day the tissue proliferation will be there. So fastly the tissue will proliferate, and lot of necrotic tissues also there. So the pathophysiology of this type of wounds, we know there are two types of mass that growth is there. One is benign and another one is malignant. If there is a malignant growth is there, usually development of non-tender nodules is there. So if there is a non-tender nodules there, gradually that nodules will enlarge. If there is a nodules enlargement there, So that nodules will affect the capillaries function and lymph vessels functions. If that leads to disorganized circulation, tissue hypoxia and necrosis. This is the pathophysiology of cancer wound. So Hanik heard about Marjolin ulcer. So Marjolin ulcer is a type of malignancy of the skin. It can change in the chronic wound. For example, bone scar ulcer or pressure ulcer, venous leg ulcer, like this. There is no change, but gradually it maybe go to the malignant ulcer. So that is the pathophysiology is different. Here, appearance of mass in the wound. The previously not present. When you do the dressing the last week, there is no mass, the new mass in their wound. But if there is a mass in the, sometimes it look like a granulation tissues in their wound. If there is that type of tissues in their wound, if you apply pressure on that, touch that part, the patient experience pain, not previously present, and change in the character, volume, and appearance. That if the mass and new mass is there, anyway, pain present, and all character and wound appearance, drainage is there. So that time you can send the patient, refer the patient to the oncologist and take a biopsy of the wound. You can confirm whether it is any Marjolin ulcer or not. Okay. We know the problems. This is a non-healing ulcer. So day by day, the proliferation of cells will be increased. So this type of patients will have physical problem, psychological problem, social problem, and spiritual problem. So here total care is very, very important for this type of patients. First, we can see what are the physical problems. So physical problems, we know pain is very, very the important problem in this type of wound. There are two ways to develop pain. The patients experience pain in this wound. One is direct exposure. The wound is exposed directly, the direct exposure of the dermis. And the another one is because of the tumor can that affect or compress the nearest blood vessels and or nerves. If the tumor will compress the nearest blood vessels or nerves, that time the patients will experience neuropathic pain. And another otherwise, that exposure, because of that exposure of dermis can cause the patient experience nociceptive pain. And malodor. Malodor means proliferation can cause lot of necrotic tissues. Because of the necrotic tissues can cause anaerobic bacterial infection is there, that can cause malodor. So another thing is stale and exudate dressings have been more than number of days. That is the another cause of malodor. So we have to change the dressings properly. And bleeding. Bleeding also, the tumor will compress the nearest blood vessels. Otherwise, sometimes the tumor will protrude the major blood vessels also. Sometimes the bleeding is the cause of death also. So bleeding, exudate. Exudates, we already discussed. Lot of purulent discharge from the wound. Itching. Itching is the new nodules will develop from the nearest tumors. That times the chemical reaction, because of the chemical reaction, the patients develop itching. And another thing is that exudate will touch the normal skin. That time the patients develop itching. And manifestation with infection with maggots also. And sometimes the patients develop maggots also, because of we come to that how to develop maggots and all. And communication difficulties also. Communication difficulties means in case of head and neck cancers, they are not able to tell their problem verbally. So that time sometimes these type of patients, they usually write in their notebook what are the problems they have, and also so communication difficulty is very the major one in case of head and neck cancers. And psychological problems, we know altered body image. Imagine in your face there is a major wound in your face. If you have a small pimple in your face, that pimple is gradually enlarge that pimple in your face. What happened? Usually, if we get a chance to see the mirror, you can see whether it is increased, the size is increased or decreased, or those things we look. But in this type of patients, the wound size will increase, and there is no, that body image will change totally. So that will affect psychologically, and sexuality will be affecting, and because of the that spreading of the disease. And maybe in between the spouse, the husband and wife is misconception of disease, maybe spreading from the wife through sexual relationship. So we need to listen to these type of patients patiently. Then only we need to understand that whether they have any psychological problems or not. Sometimes denial will be there, fear and anxiety will be there. Gradually, this type of patients go to depression and shame because of the sin. I have get this type of disease, some shame, and they are not not willing to see others also because of guilty feeling also. So we can see these type of problems and these problems when these type of patients come here, OPD or IP. And socially and spiritually also some problems. Family isolation. So family isolation is sometimes when this type of tumor diagnosed, maybe ulcer develop, what the family members usually do is they choose a corner side of the room and keep the patient there. So, and social isolation. The previously lot of friends and relatives were visiting this patient, but after this disease came, nobody is willing to this type of this patient. So that is social isolation. Society is not willing to see this type of patient because of maybe misconception and spreading of disease also. And social stigma, fear of contagion, effect on family and effects on sexual relationship and marital disharmony also. Sometimes the others are not willing to marriage a person from this type of family because of the hereditary hereditary problems and all. So that will affect the patient psychologically. So spiritually also, interference with religious rites. If there is any interference with religion, that God punished me like this. So fear of impending death also. These are the problems when the patient is having fungating wound or a cancer wound like this. So how to assess this type of wound? So here we can the same way you have to assess wound location. So here you can do the wound location there, that pressure sore also you can assess the wound location. But here why we assess the wound location is there is any mobility is involved in case of head and neck cancers. So when they are not able to turn independently. So if they turn right or left, so they have pain. So you have to, if there is any mobility involved, easily covered with a public view. So in case of head that CA buccal mucosa, imagine is a buccal mucosa. In our experience, if they have a CA buccal mucosa there, when they come and do the dressing, after that usually they put the towel like this. They cover like this. They are not willing to show the wound others. So you have to, when you assess the wound location, these are the two things. And wound appearance also, surrounding of skin you can assess, and potential for complication also. So potential for complication is here is bleeding. is any nearest major blood vessels there, that wound location. So here you need, if there is a chance of bleeding is one of the complication. So if that if you do the proper assessment, you have to prepare the patient family and the patient for any chance of bleeding. If the bleeding in their home, what will they do? You have to prepare the patient and their family. And here, principles of management part, principles of management, palliation of symptoms. Here, reducing pain. If the patient is having pain, have to reduce the pain. And controlling is a symptomatic management. If they have any infection there, you have to try to reduce the infection and control the order, managing exudate and protecting surrounding skin, and minimize bleeding also. Holistic care is very, very important. Holistic care is the total care, physical, psychological, social, and spiritual care is very, very important. Empowering patient and family in wound care. So we know this type of patients need continuous care, continuous wound management. So we need to empower the patient family for wound management. How to minimize the pain? So I already said this type of patients will develop two types of pain, nociceptive pain and neuropathic pain. If they have a nociceptive pain there, you have to adjust their systemic analgesics. If they have, if they are taking morphine 10 milligram 4 hourly, so when you see this type of patients, you can, that time the patient having pain, you can give one rescue dose of morphine. Okay, wait for 40 minutes and then you can do the dressing. You can give a small adjustment is enough for nociceptive pain patients. But in case of neuropathic pain patient, so burning, pricking type of pain there, you can some local application is essential. So you can take a sensorcaine or lignocaine and so 1:1 ratio and spread it over the wound and wait for 2 to 3 minutes or 8 minutes, and then you can do the dressing. Then the patient is almost pain-free. And malodor. Malodor means is anaerobic because of anaerobic bacterial infection. So daily cleaning and dressing is essential. And local metronidazole. This is one of the good medication, the drug of choice of anaerobic bacterial infection. So you can apply metronidazole tablet, make it that powdered form and then apply over it. Injection metronidazole. Otherwise, you can take injection metronidazole for irrigate the wound. So in case of deep ulcers and if there is a fistula there, usually we take injection metronidazole for cleaning. First we can use normal saline for cleaning. After that you can take injection metronidazole for cleaning. And you can give some systemic antibiotics also. But here your systemic antibiotics may not help the 100%. The thing is that superficially the blood vessels are not work properly. So you can, if there is an infection there, you can give a trial dose for the antibiotics for controlling the infection. The same metronidazole you can give for infection control. And frequent changing of dressing is also essential. Otherwise, because of the exudate, if there is an exudate profuse exudate there, you need to change the dressings that every 2 to 3 hourly or 4 hourly. And hydrogen peroxide, you can avoid hydrogen peroxide like and betadine for this type of patient. You can use normal saline for cleaning. If you use hydrogen peroxide and betadine, that will be more painful for that patient. It will be if you apply this type of that hydrogen peroxide and betadine for this type of wound, it may not help that too much. So either you can use normal saline or plain water for this type of wound cleaning. And bleeding is prevention is one of the major thing. So if there is a bleeding there, you can apply local pressure on that area. usually we do, if there is a bleeding there, you can apply local pressure on that area. Same sucralfate powder, sucralfate tablets. We use treat as a peptic ulcer patients. That tablet is a local action there. So you can take a tablet and make it a powder form and spread over it. And tranexamic acid also. Then you can go for systemic ethamsulate and palliative radiotherapy also you can do. If there is a large wound is there, you can give, you can refer the patient to the oncologist and take one cycle of radiotherapy. If the radiotherapy there, the size of the tumor will decrease. The stringent the tumor size that some that time that somehow that because of the stringent the tumor size, that will not affect the nearest blood vessels. That will prevent the bleeding. And here criteria for wound cleaning is goal of our main aim of this type of wound care is improve the quality of life through excellent symptom control. So if there is a pain there, we can give analgesics for that. If there is an infection there, you can use antibiotic for that. And any problem there, you can ask for the patient's problem, you can symptoms, you can give a symptomatic management. And empathetic management is very, very important. We know this type of wound is not healing, not curable. Day by day, the wound size will increase, and we should listen the patient problems, and empathetic care is very, very important. And provide a thorough bath before dressing. So if the patient is able to do the bath, you can give that advise the patient to take bath. So if they take bath, what happened is all the necrotic tissues will fall off. Without your artery fossils, without touching your artery fossils, all necrotic tissues will fall off. After that, you can clean with normal saline and apply metronidazole for this type of wound. And make sure whether the patient is pain free or not before doing the dressing. And normal saline for wound cleaning is essential. Here normal saline is the good solution for wound cleaning. Role of cancer therapy is here. Radiotherapy, I already said radiotherapy, if you refer the patient and give on cycles of radiotherapy there, that will strengthen the tumor size. Again, chemotherapy, sometimes we refer the patient for palliative radiotherapy and hormone therapy, and sometimes debulking surgery. So that large wound is there, usually you can refer the patient and find out whether debulking surgery is possible or not. So the others, radiotherapy, chemotherapy and hormone therapy will reduce the size of the wound. That time the patients will if the tumor size is stringent, this is reduced, there's a chance of prevention of bleeding and other problems also. And the last slide is maggots. So how does maggots comes? Can anyone say how does maggots comes?
Flies will lay their eggs over the housefly will lay their eggs over the wound, and that will converted into maggots.
Okay, thank you. So flies, it comes from flies. So here, so very, very important when you see this type of patients, the wound patients. So either it's bedsore or fungating ulcer. So you can tell the patient and caregivers about the importance of covering your wound. When you open it, if there is a that flies touching their own, flies laid eggs, and that after effect is maggots. So here very, very important is the clean, only when they clean the wound they can open the wound, otherwise always keep the wound closed. And they can use mosquito net. Sometimes if there is a neuropathic pain there, they are not able to cover the wound all the times. That time you can suggest they can use the mosquito net. And if the maggots come, how we will manage it is you can use turpentine for removal of maggots. So not pure directly. So you can take a turpentine in your gauze piece, soak well and fuse it well and keep close to the wound. That smell is enough for maggots to come out. When the maggots will come out, you can use the artery forceps for physical removal. So the important when we take a maggots, remove the maggots, the important thing we should remember is when they come out. Usually, when when you go with your artery forceps, they go inside. When you should not follow the maggots with your forceps. If you follow the maggots, what happened? We don't know whether there is any nearest blood vessels or not. Your artery forceps will rupture the blood vessels, and that can cause bleeding. So we should not follow the maggots with the artery forceps. When they come out, you can take it out and put it in a hot water. That is the only way to remove the maggots. So thank you.
Thank you, Sister Shiva, for the presentation. We'll take up a few questions. She has mentioned about the management of bed sores, malignant wounds, and how to clean, how to prevent bed sores, how to take care of malignant wounds, what will be the patients going through when they have a wound, even if it is a bed sore or a malignant wound, and the complications of the wound, including bleeding and maggots. And all these things are not uncommon at all. We see it very, very regularly every day. It's a really important session. Any questions?
Whether we can use either for removing maggots? Either.
We have never used either. Sorry, Sister Shiva is supposed to answer.
You can.
So the basic idea is to prevent depriving them from oxygen. So in some places they use coconut oil. So basically the maggots will be sealed off from the oxygen supply. So in order to get the oxygen, the maggots will just come out to breathe. At that time, we are just plucking them out. That is a basic idea. I have never, none of us have used either. I have heard people using coconut oil, but usually the turpentine is what we use. Sister Shiva, sorry, I just jumped in hearing the question.
I just wanted to ask you, it was very informative. You were telling about negative pressure wound therapy. Will you please explain a little more, and when do you use that?
So in case of fourth stage of ulcer, so usually my experience is when fourth stage pressure ulcer there, we refer the patient, we take a surgery consultation from the surgeon. So usually when the surgeon came, he suggests negative pressure wound therapy. So we don't have a that special machine for that. Usually what we do here is we use it same suction apparatus and take a small pieces of dressing gum sheet pad and some plastic material over there, and then apply over the wound, and 2 tubings is also connected into the suction apparatus, and that 5 mm pressure is adjusting into the suction apparatus. That suction, when the suction that machine on, that will give some pressure on that area. That time, 1 tube will remove the exudates. Exudates means all that oozing, purulent discharge from the wound. Once the discharge removed automatically because of the pressure, that healing is improved. So we have a 3 patient we did 3 patients here. So some improvement was there.
Thank you. It's mainly to remove the exudate.
Exudate.
Okay, thank you.
It will remove the exudate as well as it. I think I've seen at least 2 patients long back, maybe an year back when I was there. So it enhances a little bit of proliferation also. I think so.
Okay.
When that
Improve the
negative pressure comes, it
Okay.
enhances the proliferation. So I've seen the wound just becoming red and proliferating, filling up the space with good tissue.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you,
that,
ma'am.
that will improve the circulation also because of the pressure, continuous pressure. No, that will improve the
Okay.
circulation. Then the granulation tissues will be there.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
There is one question regarding the sticking tape, whether it can cause skin peeling. There is one question regarding keeping the wound open, and I've replied to that. None of the wounds should be kept open. All the wounds starting from peeling, skin peeling, we keep it closed. And Sister Shiba, there is one question whether the sticking tape can cause damage to the skin.
Yes. So when you remove the that adhesive tape, like a micropore or that linen plaster, no. So when you remove that plaster, there is a chance of peeling of skin there. If you apply more pressure on that area, for example, if you give that IV infusion here, so usually you can put a Venflan or a SV set here. You can more 3 or 4 plaster you apply there. No, when you remove it, there is a chance of peeling of skin on that area. Usually, when the patient lying on this side, this position or a right lateral position, there is a that unrelieved pressure. It's a chance of unrelieved pressure on that area. If you apply more pressure on that area, there is a chance of developing pressure ulcer on that area. So what we do is, when you remove the dressing, you can soak it well and remove. Then the
Okay.
peeling will not be there.
A micropore is not that sticky. It is very difficult to micropore make it sticky because sometimes it just goes off. So it is very less sticky. It won't generally cause skin peeling compared to any other dressing. And you can tell the patient to have a bath with the dressing. If the patient is able to bath, if it is for the malignant wound, tell them to take the bath with the dressing, so it just goes off. Or if it is for a bed sore for a bedridden patient, soak it well, do your household activities or whatever, come back, by the time it will be soaked and you can just remove it. Yes, Dr. Annette. We can't hear you, ma'am. You are muted.
I want to ask Dr. Shiba more about this metronidazole powder, the strength and how frequently should we use it on a wound?
So same metronidazole powder, metronidazole tablet, you can take it out and crushed it as make it a powder form, and then you can use. Whenever you do the dressing, you can apply.
Is it 400 mg or 200 mg?
We use the 400 mg metronidazole here, so you can use 400 mg.
And how many times in the day?
That
how
is
frequently in the day?
Whenever you change the dressings, you can apply. Whenever you change the dressing, usually we remove that metronidazole powder also. Whenever you what this so when you do the dressing, the changing of dressing, no, that time anyway you just clean with normal saline so that all metronidazole will go. So then you just apply again metronidazole, and then you can apply Gamgee pad over the wound. So whenever you change the dressing, you can apply metronidazole.
And your number of dressings depends on the exudate, how fast the dressings get soaked, depending on the exudate and the foul smelling. According to that, it is twice a day in a hospice setting like ours, where they change the dressing 2 times regularly. But if the exudate is more foul smelling, oozing more, then they change it more frequently. So every time you can use the metronidazole powder, and you can tell if it is in a home care setting, you can tell them to crush everything together in a mixer, 50, 100 tablets, whatever, and then keep it in a small container so that they can use it. So if you crush together, then it is easier to crush rather than taking 1 or 2 or 3 tablets and crush. Just The powder depends on the size of the wound. How much powder metronidazole can be used? It depends on the size of the wound. Bigger wounds need large amount of powder, and smaller wounds need little bit amount of powder. So in last few questions, is there any role for betadine lotion for cleaning the wounds, Sister Shiva?
No. You cannot. You should not use any betadine or hydrogen peroxide this type of wound. If you use hydrogen peroxide for this type of wound, that will irritate the skin also, irritate the wound. So if you apply hydrogen peroxide or hydrogen peroxide is the main thing. So if you apply the hydrogen peroxide over the wound, and then you can ask the patient what is the effect of that area. After that, the patient should tell you there is very irritative, very intolerable pain on that part. So I think hydrogen peroxide, and there is no role in use of hydrogen peroxide and betadine for this type of wound. This is not curable. You can use normal saline for cleaning.
And you can use betadine in a surgical wound, of course, but not in a bed sore. And hydrogen peroxide actually can kill the normal cells. So it actually increases the size of the wound like anything. It just increases the area of the wound. If it is a deep ulcer, whether it should be packed with petroleum jelly? What if it is a very deep ulcer? Should it be packed with petroleum jelly?
Deep ulcer can. So
a very deep bed sore, I guess it will be a bed sore. So do we need to pack it with petroleum?
So yeah, if there is a deep ulcer, for example, third stage ulcer there, third stage bed sore there, you can take a metronidazole powder and mix with white petroleum jelly, and then you can apply over the wound. That will help to remove the slough also. That if you apply white petroleum jelly, what is the action of white petroleum jelly is give moisturizing effect and remove the slough also. So in case of that third stage or fourth stage is there, you can apply same thing on wound. That will help to heal the wound.
Can we move on to the case presentation? And we can take up new questions. Yeah.
One more thing. So the management of exudate, I forgot to mention the exudate management. If the exudate profuse, so usually we use 1 or 2. That will produce anxiety and depression to the patient and family members also. If there is a lot of that fluid discharge from the wound, so they also anxious about what happened in their wound. So you just instead of usually we use 1 or 2 Gamgee pad at a time for covering that wound. Instead of 1 or 2 Gamgee pad, you can take 5 Gamgee pad at a time. Then you can close the wound. Then they can give that time give some how that maybe instead of changing the dressing 2 to 3 hourly, you can change the dressing to that maybe after 5 hours. That will help to remove the exudate. So that is the important thing. Whenever the exudate profuse, you can take more Gamgee pad at a time. Okay.
Can we start with the case presentation now? Right. So while the time it is getting loaded, regarding exudate, you can even use some patients themselves started using sanitary pads or diapers cut into pieces at the size of the wound and keep it covered. So the sanitary pads will absorb a lot. So whenever they go out, it won't spoil their clothes wherever it is. So you can use cut diapers or sanitary pads over the highly profusive exudative wound. Yes, we can start the case.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, we can hear you.
I am Lalita, working in St. Teresa's Hospital, Hyderabad. My patient is 58-year-old male known case of paraplegic for last 26 years and diagnosed also to have diabetes mellitus, hypertension, decubitus ulcer, grade 3 hemorrhoids and chronic constipation. He's really from a remote village and was a farmer. He has 2 children. Both got married now, but children were of 2 and 3 years age when he met with accident and sustained paraplegia, and he has 1 acre of field. His presenting complaints are ulcer in the gluteal aspect with foul smelling discharge, constipation and bleeding per rectum. Coming to the history, he had met with an accident and sustained paraplegia 26 years ago. At the time of accident, patient underwent emergency spinal decompression, but this did not do any good to the patient. He was in the neuro center in the city nearly for 2 years with different modalities of physiotherapy. In these 2 years, he had some improvement in bladder and bowel incontinence. For the last 26 years, he learned to move in the house with wheelchair. 6 years ago, he was diagnosed to have coronary artery disease. Also developed diabetes mellitus, hypertension and started treatment. Since then, he had multiple admissions to hospital with congestive heart failure, severe anemia, chronic kidney disease, etc. He has developed bed sore in the gluteal aspect, which kept growing in size and depth for last 4 years, in spite of daily dressings and the use of air bed. There is foul-smelling discharge from the wound, staining his clothes and the bed linen. He also complains of having chronic constipation. He takes his wife's help to pass stool as he had to stain a lot to pass motion. So he has recurrent episodes of bleeding per rectum, resulting in anemia, requiring hospitalization for blood transfusion. Coming to the examination, he's 98 kg weight, lying supine in bed. When we see him, the upper body is really obese, but we see a lot of wastage in the waist below. His BP is 130/90 and he looks pale. Coming to the examination of the ulcer, we have to have 2 people to make him prone to examine the ulcer in the gluteal area. There is ulcer seen, which is measuring 15 into 10 centimeters, almost extending very close to the anal opening. The depth of the ulcer is 4 to 5 centimeters, and we can see one more deeper cavity around 8 centimeters, which is packed with gauze, and there is serous discharge with small bone fragments. And proctoscopy done in right lateral position, left lateral position, which also showed grade 3 hemorrhoids. His hemoglobin is 7 grams on admission. His fasting blood sugar 100 milligrams and PLBS 140, serum creatinine 2.3 milligram. He's on treatment Clavum, Ornida, Tranostat, folic acid, Oroferexte, and daily dressing with normal saline and presently using Megahil ointment. He is also on Movicol syrup, frequent change of position and mobilization in the wheelchair in the house. Coming to psychological aspects, he feels God has abandoned him. He is a burden to his family. He feels guilty that his wife has taken family burden on her for so many years. He was not given his share of property by his other 2 brothers. On inquiring, the explanation what we got is that his share of property was exhausted for his treatment at the time of accident. And lot of money is being spent on his medication. He feels guilty that he could not give good education to his children. We can can get from his talk that he is inside the house for so many years, except hospital visits. He needs the help of 2 to 3 people to carry him to the car and get him down from the car whenever he is taken to hospital. He is from a village and he had to depend on the compounder by nearby village for the change of Foley's catheter every 2 to 3 weeks. And the medication which he has been using for last 6 years is that metformin, Diter, Lipwas, Ramipril, and Cavrinol. The main concern now seems to be he feels that God has abandoned him. We got from when we talk to him, he had a lot of hope that God will cure him. But for last 4 to 5 years, after he's diagnosed to have all other diseases like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, he lost the hope in God. But he is a person of prayer. We see him rosary in his hand and talks about God. He feels bad the bed sore is not healing and having foul smell. His wife has to wash his linen every day. However, he does not complain anything about his wife or the son. He also feels he's a burden to his family and also mentions when we talk to him that lot of money is spent on his medication. Coming to the summary, the patient is 58-year-old paraplegic and in bed for last 26 years. Presently, he also had added problems with diabetes mellitus, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, coronary artery disease, non-healing ulcer, and grade 3 hemorrhoids. He had frequent hospitalizations with various problems. Presently, trouble with non-healing ulcer, with foul-smelling discharge in spite of daily dressings and medications. He had multiple blood transfusions for anemia caused by bleeding PR due to grade 3 hemorrhoids. He feels that God has abandoned him, burden for his family, and lot of money is spent on the medications. Next. Coming to the discussion points, what are the problems faced by the patient? How to make him comfortable after knowing multiple problems? Do you think that we need to support him and also his family? Thank you. The case is open for discussion.
Thank you, Sister Lalita. I think it has actually summarized everything that Sister Shiba was talking about, how a bedridden state along with wound can actually affect a person to such an extent that he feels that he's just abandoned, and what is the point of living like this, affecting his dignity. So everything has come together in this patient's story. So to start the discussion, anything from the participants, because we just discussed how to manage this kind of wound. And from her description, it is very clear that it is a very, very deep wound with bone involvement. So I would like to hear from the participants before asking Sister Shiva. Anyone would like to clear anything or ask something to add on to the existing management? Does that mean you didn't understand what Sister Shiva was talking for 1 hour?
And the main thing is that we have to treat the bed sore first. That is the main concern for the patient. The bed sore is the main concern for the patient. Other things, he is on treatment, diabetes, hypertension, cardiac patient, all are under control. But the main thing is that foul smelling and that bed sore has to be treated. And because the patient is very obese, 98 kg, so the problem is positioning and posture, and it's very difficult for this patient who is severely obese.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there is one caregiver in the family, and she may be finding it difficult. So on the other side, is there anyone raising hands?
Is there a role for a surgical debridement for the wound to enhance the healing?
Yeah.
That is one more point for discussion, whether to go for a surgical debridement or just to stick on to the conservative management. I would like to hear from you all. Should we actually suggest a surgical management, or should we stick on to the conservative part? How do you choose which one is good for your patient?
Long standing also surgical management is needed.
So
we'll send the patient for a surgical consultation and decide. That is an option.
So ideally, yes, this big wound we can ask about surgery opinion. Definitely yes. And before giving over to Sister Shiva, I would like to tell that I have seen many small, thin, lean, small nurses turning patients on their own in the IP, huge obese patients just on their own. So I always wondered how nurses do these position changes, because the moment you start doing it for someone, you just struggle. You cannot how to turn, and then you have to drag the sheets as she was mentioning. So I think it's really important to stand with the nurses. The way they change the position of patient is amazing. I don't know whether you have noticed it. How much obese the patient is, one small nurse will come and just change it. Within few seconds, they just change the position, and you will be wondering what happened. Right? So I always make them show it to the family when we go home. We show to the family how to change the position. They just fold the leg, and then they turn the lower part of the body, and then the upper part. So position change, that's amazing work that nurses do. So it's really important to learn it from our nurses. How do they do it, and teach the family. That is one thing I have learned myself from the nurses. So thought that would be helpful. And regarding the surgical thing, sorry, I'll just hand over it to Sister Shiva. Before I forget, I would like to tell. So it's always a consideration of risk versus benefit, because there are so many patients who will benefit from surgical debridement or any surgical interventions, but there are so many on the other side where they find it really difficult to transport to the hospital firsthand, and after and the expenses of the surgery, and generally surgeons think a lot of things regarding the prognosis, whether this is a good wound to be healed, everything they consider, then only they will take up for surgical debridement. They are not happy to take up this. From our experience, whatever money you give, they are not happy to take up this kind of wounds at all, because they think that this may not heal, because it has reached to the state where it might have caused an osteomyelitis. And so the expenses apart, shipping to hospital, post-surgical care at home. If she is unable to look after him or change the position, what happens to the post-surgical care? Usually they tell the patient to be in a prone position, which usually culminate in a penile ulcer. So that's what we see regularly. So when we suggest a surgical, we do get surgeons, we do take patients for surgical management, but depending on the prognosis, whether this patient will be this wound is curable or treatable. We tell the surgeon to come and see the wound first. If it is okay for taking up for surgery, then we start talking about the logistics, whether it is doable, whether this patient can be transported, whether they can bear the expense, whether they can take care of the post-operative care. So many things come into play, and clearly depends on the age and prognosis of the illness also. Over to you, Sister Shiva. Extremely sorry that I took some time.
So as we discussed, this that fourth stage of wound is there. So fourth stage is we discussed earlier. This is affecting the bone, muscle, and tendon. So here, if possible, you can do the skin slough cutting. But if you do the slough cutting, you can give a special attention for if there is any red granulation tissues there, you can give a special attention. If possible, to send the patient for surgery consultation, whether it is any skin grafting is possible or not. I don't know whether this patient is up for that skin grafting. This patient is having cardiac problem also. And the another thing is negative pressure therapy. If possible, you can do it this patient. That will help, I think so. And another thing is the same. You use Mehakil. Instead of that, you can use metronidazole for this. You can try one course of metronidazole, that oral tablets, and that apply local application also. And injection metronidazole, you can clean with the injection metronidazole also. That will reduce infection. And another thing is this patient is and demonstration, as Dr. Sridevi said. So we usually said you have to change the position 2 to 3 hourly. They don't know how to change the patient. So in an obese patients, what we do here is we have a sliding sheets here, but usually we within the sheets, instead of pulling the patient, you can pull the sheets. Okay, first before you turn the patients, you should explain the patient what you are going to do. Okay, so you just tell them, I am going to turn you from supine to that right lateral or left lateral position for prevention of pressure sore. So in your language, you can tell the patient, and you just pull the patient towards you first, and then you have to turn. You have to that first you have to flex the knee, and then you have to turn the patient. So this is then when you here what we do is when you go for a home visit, we our nurses demonstrate the patient caregivers how to that change the position. Then only they know, and how to change the sheets also. Okay, so I know I said while we changing the sheets, we usually pull the sheets under the patient. There's a chance of friction. There's a breakdown of skin is there. So that is very, very important. Whenever we change the patient, that time you have to remove the sheets also. So all the sheets you have to pull under the push under the patient, and you have to spread a new one that place, and you have to turn this side, and then you have to remove the old sheets and spread it the new sheets. So those things you have to demonstrate them. Then only they know they should know how to turn the patient and how to remove the old sheets and how to spread the new sheets. And here and this patient is having, I understand that this patient is having Foley's catheter. So if Foley's catheter patients, what are the main things we need to know? This is perineal care is very, very important for these patients. How to do the perineal care? So you have to wash with from the umbilicus to mid thigh. That is perineal care. Wash with soap and water. And constipation management is essential. So if the patient is having, this patient is having constipation. So if there is a constipation there is a chance of infection, that urinary tract infection there. So constipation management is very, very important here, and oral intake. So this is one of the foreign body. Okay, so the patients will develop infection frequently. So oral intake of fluids is very, very important for prevention of infection. So anything you want to add, Dr. Sridevi?
Yeah, for the X-ray, the wife was telling she has to change the sheets every time because of a lot of X-ray. She can try a cut diaper if they can afford. Like one diaper can be used, cut in small pieces according to the size of the wound, and can be applied. So it won't leak outside. It absorbs a lot of X-ray, and outside cover is a plastic kind of cover, so it won't actually soil the clothes. Patients find it really helpful because it won't soil the clothes as in the cloth pads. That is one thing. And his hemoglobin is really low, 7. So that itself is not a good thing for wound healing. And he has bone fragments coming out, so definitely he may have osteomyelitis. So I don't think they will take up for a surgery until and unless the bone chip stops coming. That's what our surgeons tell us. They don't take it up for surgery, they just treat with. But we had a lot of patients with the same presentation, came up very well just with conservative management. But really need patience, really need thorough cleaning with metronidazole. Sometimes they do use the metronidazole nebulization. They use the medicine in the nebulizer and they remove the mask and show it to the wound. So the vapors just get into the deeper parts of the malignant wounds or the bed sores. It has shown a very good effect in both kind of wounds, reducing the foul smell and the infection, everything. It works really well. And thorough dressing is the only key in conservative management. And one more thing would be, some people do learn how to change catheter on their own. Sometimes the caregiver, the wife or the son or the daughter will learn to change the catheter at home, or the patient himself. Some of our patients do catheter change on their own. So that is not to avoid calling someone. It is that they feel, okay, I am doing something for my body on my own. I can do it on my own. So that is one thing, or my family member is doing it for us. So that is one thing that helps us. But thorough wound care with metronidazole and petroleum jelly. You really need to pack the wound with not tight pack. Soak the gauze with the metronidazole and petroleum jelly mix, and pack it not tightly, not too loose, so that it will cover the entire cavity, and then cover with a dressing pad or diaper or a sanitary pad. That's what I think. And his creatinine is also pretty high, so not pretty high, but it is high. So I don't think he'll be taken up for a surgical management, and I don't think he can be shifted to a hospital. He's very obese, and shifting him from home to a vehicle and to a hospital and hospitalization usually in our patients may not be feasible. So all these things that we told today can be done in a very remote home setting. uh, Totally among illiterate patients. They don't need to buy gauze pads. They can just tear off their saris or dhotis and use it as pads. Metronidazole is the cheapest medicine that you can give. Petroleum jelly, if you buy in bulk, it is one of the other cheapest thing that you can use. I think we have finished our time. There will be more questions in the wound care, because wound care is really important. You can send us emails, or you can send it in the WhatsApp chat, and I'll try to answer, or we'll forward that questions to Sister Shiva and get you answers. Thank you, Sister Shiva, for the session. And thank you for your time and explaining each and every aspect. And I know that this is very crumpled up, because bedsore management and everything is a long session. And she will be able to demonstrate it is better than telling it verbally. If you come to us, we can actually demonstrate how we do it in our set. Thank you, Sister Shiva.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you all. So we are launching the feedback polls now. Please do the feedback, then only leave the meeting.
If I have missed some questions in the chat or something you asked, just send me in the WhatsApp. I'll respond.
Uh,